This is the last photo before it happened. 1 week after going to the playground with my niece and my brother, my dad would suffer a massive stroke that would change our lives forever.
With your feet on the air and your head on the ground, try this trick and spin it, yeah. Your head will collapse if there's nothing in it. Then you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Oh, I was swimming in the Caribbean. Animals were hiding behind the rocks, yeah. Except a little fish, and he bumped into me, trying to talk to me, talk to me. Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
After a week vacationing at the lake, my parents drove home to St. Louis the same as they had many times before. They got home, unpacked, and sat down to watch TV. Nothing was out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I rode back half the lake and it felt fine. Got in the house here and cleaned all the mail was work and stuff, all the mail, and then I started moving through that. I was sitting down looking at that, and all of a sudden, boom.
My dad had suffered a massive ischemic stroke.
And then from that point on, I lost it.
Luckily, my mom was in the same room when it happened and knew exactly what was going on. She called 911 immediately, and the ambulance was here within about 5 minutes. My dad was rushed to the closest hospital, and the doctors did everything they could to try to minimize the damage.
In the emergency department, often when a patient comes in by ambulance, it's unknown really what's going on. Our pre-hospital providers, our paramedics, are quite good at identifying, or at least having a high degree of suspicion if a patient's having a stroke or some other process going on. So we usually get notification that someone may be having a stroke, and we have a whole process and team in place to meet the patients when they come in. And at that point, they're undifferentiated, which means we don't know if they're having a bleeding type of stroke, a hemorrhagic stroke, or an ischemic stroke, which is usually kind of traditionally known as kind of a blood clot stroke. So first thing we use to differentiate those two is we bring them right into our CAT scan suite, which is a kind of a fancy x-ray that takes pictures of the brain, and that lets us know immediately, is this patient having a blood clot type stroke, or are they having a hemorrhagic or a bleeding type stroke? And that is kind of the fork in the road that kind of allows us to make a decision on how to treat this patient.
Stroke is when the arteries that supply blood to the brain are occluded and basically block blood flow to that tissue. And that's called an ischemic stroke. The other type of stroke is a hemorrhagic stroke, and that's when the blood vessels actually burst and bleed out onto the brain tissue. Both types are going to cause long-term tissue damage.
So what are the warning signs of a stroke?
There's some mnemonics out there that are in general are good to know. The one that's well known is FAST, and that's F-A-S-T. F stands for face. Any kind of asymmetry or kind of funny looking to the face, usually on one side, can be a sign of a stroke. A is arm. Our arm or leg. Do they have difficulty using that arm? If they hold it up in front of them, does it drop down to their lap or to their side? That could be a sign of a stroke, or that's something called paralysis. And then S is speech. Do they have difficulty speaking? Do they understand what you're saying? Is their speech garbled or slurred? That can be a sign of a stroke. And then T is time. Time is critical. Time is don't call your physician, don't call your family member in another state, ask them what to do. Call 911. Let them come, do an evaluation, and then triage you and bring you to a hospital with the capability of managed stroke. The warning signs of stroke are really critical for the patient because, for many different reasons. There are many centers out there that are very well organized stroke centers, but unless the patient arrives to those centers in a certain time window, our therapies that we have to offer them will no longer be available to them because of a very specific time window. If they go outside that window, then our treatments actually can cause harm as opposed to benefit.
Most people who have a stroke are going to experience some degree of weakness on one side of the body. A lot of them are going to experience speech changes, so difficulty forming the words and then also difficulty thinking of the words. And a lot of people will also have difficulty with their vision on either one or both sides of their body.
My dad suffered paralysis on the right side of his body, some speech changes, and some personality changes. For the first few weeks after the stroke, my dad declined rapidly. Despite the best efforts of the hospital staff, he was refusing to eat or do much of anything. He nearly died before finally getting back on track. The first few weeks after a stroke are crucial for recovery, so my dad was pushed as hard as possible, despite being pretty much out of it.
I don't remember anything for probably 2 weeks in the hospital.
After a couple months in the hospital and assisted living, insurance finds a way to stop paying, and my dad was sent home. He was basically released back into the fog of real life with no map or idea of how to get back to who he used to be. Around this same time, I made the tough decision to move back home from California after 13 years. When I first moved back home, my dad was living here in the living room. He had a small bed and a wheelchair that he used to get to the bathroom or to be taken to therapy. Otherwise, he could walk with a cane, but very, very slowly. It was depressing for me to see.
If the patient makes a full recovery and doesn't need extensive services, the patient may be able to go right home to where they came from. That is the ideal setting. And that's every patient's ideal setting, an ideal situation where they came in, had a stroke, was treated, or somehow they kind of recanalized, opened up that stroke, did better, and can go home and actually go back in the community. There's a blend of that where patients were almost back to normal. They don't really meet criteria to be full-time inpatient in a rehab facility or nursing home, but they just need some specialized services. So they can go home and either have in-home care where they have an occupational therapist, physical therapist come into their home and help them with very specific tasks. It may be speech. It may be learning how to do certain tasks at home that due to damage to the brain, they just have difficulty doing it. So it's very patient-centric, patient-specific, what their needs are and what their deficits are.
As far as the degree of recovery, it's really unique to the individual. There are factors that can help predict that type of prognosis, such as age, socioeconomic status, years of education, and then also the size and the extent of the stroke. So typically people who have a constellation of symptoms, such as speech and language difficulty, swallowing, hemianopsia, hemiplegia, the more symptoms that you layer on top of symptoms, the more unlikely a full recovery is. But typically if there's one overarching deficit, then it's really realistic to make a full or near full recovery.
So what type of therapy is best?
Well, certainly the intensive therapy is gaining momentum. The old convention was a twice a week for 50-minute service delivery model, which we know that, and not just for aphasia, but for a lot of different types of disorders, that a shorter term but intensive program results in better outcomes. and then also group therapy.
And insurance will only cover a portion of any therapy.
In general, I think that part of the reason why those policies are in place is because for so many years, physicians and clinicians believed that recovery would only happen to a certain point and then it would diminish. And so they're still basing their policies on antiquated beliefs. With any type of intervention, when we're saying you're going to continue to get better, there's really no plateau, then there is no end in sight. So maybe that's a little scary. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. We're just going to pay for therapy forever.
Sure.
Yeah, I understand logistically that there have to be limitations.
Right.
But I certainly think that there is room for compromise.
The most noticeable changes in my dad are the paralysis on the right side and his speech. He suffers from aphasia, which causes him to confuse nouns and names. Often the word that comes out of his mouth is similar to or opposite of the word he actually means to say. This forces me to look at everything he says in a backwards or upside down way. The best way I can describe it is it's like driving in a rainstorm with moments of clarity and blurry.
You're going to go to church right away, right away to Pennis at 7? At 7?
To the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the gym at, when we get back around noon.
Oh, okay.
Aphasia is a language deficit in either reading, writing, speech, or comprehension.
So did you do all right today?
Yeah, not too well tired out. I go on and lost. I think a name and I know what it is. I can't get it. And all of a sudden I come in with that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Takes a little while longer for you to make the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been reading up on aphasia, and that just seems very, very common. So I wouldn't, feel bad about it or anything. It's just the way it goes. My dad has the most trouble with names and nouns and seems to default to things from his past.
Sometimes I gotta step back and refrain it some way. Think of a different way. Some ways I don't finish at all.
Yeah.
But most of them I can catch my mouth and it comes back, and then catch where the note is, and then come back and say, yeah, that's right, that's correct.
In addition to his daily organized therapies, my dad continues to work to get better on his own at home. Every day he does a routine of exercises and walks around our house with or sometimes without a cane. He's most concerned about his body and paralysis, but he also does tons of word search puzzles that help his brain and speech. Later on, I started to encourage him to walk around the neighborhood, which he seemed to like. This is where I started to see the most progress being made as we slowly walked further and further as the months went by. A lot of recovery seems to be based around the concept of neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to sort of rewire itself over time.
Neuroplasticity is the idea that neurons can regenerate and form new connections with other neurons. One of the more contemporary ideas about what we're seeing in recovery is that rather than new connections being formed, there is a release of previously existing connections that were not used before the stroke.
We know that severe strokes often are going to do worse short-term and long-term. We are surprised all the time at the plasticity and the remarkable nature of the brain to really kind of remodel itself and parts of the brain to kind of learn how to kind of take up for damaged parts of the brain.
Although he's not always happy about it, my dad has participated in several studies that track the changes in his brain. The tests aren't very difficult or time-consuming, so he does them, but he's definitely happy when they're done. The day-to-day life of a stroke survivor is very 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's full of slow progress and some stumbles. Every day my dad needs help with a lot of stuff. He can't make meals anymore, so he needs all of his food prepared for him. Breakfast and lunch, he pretty much eats the same thing every day, so that makes it easy on us. What do you want for lunch today?
Well, they have root beer, I suppose.
Root beer again?
No, not root beer. 7-Up.
Okay.
And I guess I gotta get potty.
Not potty. Starts with a P, I think, is what you're thinking of.
What?
Starts with a P, I think, but not potty. Peanut?
Yeah,
Did you have that yesterday?
yeah,
Oh, you did. You had peanut butter and jelly yesterday?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to have Sam. Hey, can we get that?
It's okay.
I'm out of it.
Ham. Okay.
Oh boy.
I'll get it, yeah. He needs to be reminded to take all of his pills. There's 10 different pills that he takes twice a day. He needs to be reminded to take them in the right dosages. He has to go in for blood tests to make sure that he's getting the right amounts of the pills. Early on, especially, or for the first 9 months or so, he needed a lot of help with things in the bathroom, like getting in and out of a bathtub, shaving, washing his hair, even brushing his teeth. He needed help with everything. So I think Mom and I might go out and look for your shower thing today. We talked about it this morning.
Shower who?
We're going to get that bench or chair for the shower so that you can take a shower on your own in the bathroom there.
Oh yeah.
And so we talked about maybe you would do a shower for yourself on Wednesdays or something, and then we would do the bath that's still on Sunday. So maybe you would have 2 showers a week, or baths.
Well, I don't know. I might do all right, but you have to get a new car.
You mean with the chair thing?
Yeah, I don't think you have to.
I don't know. I don't trust you standing up in the shower.
I don't know.
One of the biggest parts of taking care of my dad really ends up being driving. Because he's paralyzed on the right side of his body, he can't drive anymore. So I'm driving him all over town every day of the week to go to therapy or to a blood test or to a doctor's appointment. It's just never ending.
She called in this morning and said Mommy had been in an envelope to the place, and she had an envelope back. But she had an envelope at the restaurant there. Cost her $300.
An ambulance, you mean?
Yeah. $300 for an hand job. Oh man. She couldn't believe it.
One of the changes from a stroke can be personality changes. My dad has changed a little bit. I have to say he's nicer. He's a little more agreeable. So I like him more now, which I find weird saying. He's just a little bit different than what he used to be. And I'm okay with it, really. I mean, it's a lot more work for me and for my mom, but, I do like him better.
This guy go.
Texting.
Jeez.
Oh, man, those people behind him should be so mad.
I know it. Make America great again.
Yep.
I don't see it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are like you.
I don't know why.
I don't think you can overstate the importance of effort and family support. My dad was always a hard worker, even before the stroke, but afterwards, he's even become more hardworking and more determined to get better. He works like crazy every day on his therapies and his recovery. My job is to be there for him, make sure he's safe, and push him forward.
My arm and my ankle, every time. Just keep screaming. Let's scream some more.
Yeah, but your leg's getting better, and yesterday you did the more with your arm on the chair.
Yeah, but not that normal way. I don't know. It's got a long way to go.
Yep. But you've also come a long way also.
Yeah.
Effort and the spirit of hope is probably the number one predictor of progress in therapy.
And my dad likes to work.
Just kept them moving forward, kept them moving forwards, kept getting every march went a little bit better.
It really is crazy, though, to see some of the things that he's accomplished. The first time I saw him ride his bike up a hill in our neighborhood, I got chills. It's startling just to see how a body can recover, or how a person can recover when they're so determined to do so. And granted, I mean, he's in a lot of therapies and in a lot of things to help him get better, but he's putting in the work. And that is the biggest part. Every day, he does the same routine around the house. He does his exercises in the morning, and he does some walks periodically throughout the day. He does laps around our house. He just keeps working, and he's going to keep working until he gets better.
She asked me like four words, and I would have to believe with her the answer, which is not one of the four. And I got a lot of those right.
Okay, good. One of these doesn't belong kind of thing?
Yeah. Used to mix it. And I rushed them through. It just some on through one time. And I got them right, so.
Good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Slowly, over time, everything improves.
Oh yeah, I've made big improvement, especially walking all over the floor.
Oh, the neighborhood?
Yeah, the neighborhood. It's really good. Well, I go up the stairs by myself now.
Yeah.
You know, and I walk down once in a while, but once in a while I walk down by myself
Yeah, right.
with everything. So everything's totally different.
It's not always easy, and he may never be exactly who he was. But we're all glad that my dad is still here. And you can be sure he'll keep working to get the most out of life. I leave you now with where we began, with my niece, my brother, and my dad. Things are a little different now, but a lot has returned to how it used to be.
With your feet on the air and your head on the ground. Try this trick and spin it, yeah. Your head will collapse. If there's nothing in it, then you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind?